Hi everyone, I'm Hillary Grant and I'm going to talk to you today about the book Bunnicula. It was written by James and Deborah Howe and published around the late 70s. It's also illustrated by Alan Daniel. I chose this book because it was one of my favorites as a child. I read it in about the 3rd grade and did a skit on it for one of my classes. I played the cat. What's funny about this book is that it's actually told from the point of view of a dog in first person. It really starts in the author's notes in the beginning, where the author makes it clear that the book is brought to her by a dog, Harold, who has written it. Harold actually is not necessarily the protagonist so much as he is more of an observer. I wouldn't say that there's necessarily a main protagonist in this book. It's more about the life and interactions between these household pets of Family X, which Harold refers to as the Monroes. The Monroe family consists of Mr. and Mrs. Monroe and their 2 boys, Pete and Toby. Toby being the gentler of the 2 boys. And they have a dog, Harold, and a cat, Chester. But in the first chapter, we are introduced to a new pet, a bunny that they find at the theater in a box when they go to see the movie Dracula. When they bring it home, the mom suggests that they name it Bunnicula since they found it in that movie. So he earns his name and is kind of left in the living room in his new cage for Harold and Chester to get to know. Chester, the cat, is very imaginative, thinks of himself as very intellectual. He gets very sarcastic at times, which implies one of the tones of the book. He's very dramatic. Some might call him a little delusional. And then you have kind of like his opposite in Harold, who's very laid back, just really enjoys his quality time with his friend Chester and his owner, Toby. Getting into the book, after the first couple nights, Chester starts noticing some odd behaviors and characteristics about the new bunny. At first you might think it's driven by jealousy, maybe childhood rivalry, but he begins to notice some physical characteristics of Bunnicula, and then further along he starts noticing behaviors. And he starts doing research. He's a cat that reads, and he begins reading all these books on different kinds of monsters, and comes to the conclusion that Bunnicula is in fact a vampire. And I'll read you one of his descriptions after his first night of observation. It says, "He slicked his ears back close to his body, and for the first time, Chester said, I noticed the peculiar marking on his forehead. What had seemed an ordinary black spot between his ears took on a strange V shape, which connected with the big black patch that covered his back and each side of his neck. It looked as if he were wearing a coat. No, more like a cape than a coat." Through the silence had drifted the strains of a remote and exotic music. He also goes on to describe that he saw Bunnicula smile, a very thrilling smile that revealed two little fangs where his protruding bunny teeth should have been. After that night, some strange occurrences start happening, and Chester stays up to observe them. For instance, he notices that Bunnicula is able to get out of his cage without actually opening the cage, and he also is able to get into the cabinets and into the fridge without using his hands or any other means of getting in, and begins turning the vegetables white. The first thing they find is a tomato, which is just completely drained of all its juices and has been drained of its color as well. The family, along with Harold and Chester, begin finding all kinds of vegetables, such as zucchini and broccoli, just about anything that Bunnicula can get his hands on, or so we assume. He also only is awake at night and sleeps all day. And this all combined together kind of sends Chester into a frenzy. He gets very obsessed and starts coming up with creative ways of how to deal with Bunnicula and warn the Monroe family. It gets very comical because obviously a cat cannot quite communicate with a family through language, so he began trying to take matters into his own hands. One of the illustrations are just brilliant in depicting these. I wish I could share all of them with you. In one instance, Chester puts garlic around his neck and all over the house, and Miss Monroe comes in and just freaks out and gives him a bath, which all cats do not enjoy. And another time he decides he's going to get rid of Bunnicula, and in his research finds out that you can get rid of them by using a stake and driving it into their heart. Except Chester does not realize that this means a wooden stake, and consequently decides to use Mrs. Monroe's dinner preparations for the next night. And here's just a picture of that, him pounding the steak into. The first time I read this, I think I probably would go back to that picture just for a laugh, and I found myself doing it again, reading it this time. What's great is that James Howe has gone on to continue the series and has made several books about Bunnicula and his family, and they are all very humorous. I actually read a couple more just so that I knew the series when I talked to you guys. Something that James and Deborah Howe included for their adult audience, maybe those reading it with their kids or teachers, to kind of connect the dots, is that Bunnicula is found in a box of dirt at the theater, which for those who have read Dracula, we know that Dracula had to arrive in a box of dirt from his homeland, because that is the only way that vampires can travel or be invited into a land, is if they're either invited personally or if they have their own soil. So upon arriving in his new home, he has to be brought in his own soil. He is also found with a tag that is in a different language, which Harold recognizes as a dialect from the Carpathian Mountains, which is associated with Transylvania, which we know that our original Dracula is from. The question becomes, is Bunnicula really a vampire? Can a bunny be a vampire? And how will Chester deal with that? And will it kind of keep the pets together, or will it kind of drive a stake between Chester and Harold and their friendship? I can tell you that it is just a great read, and that you will just find yourself laughing and really kind of identifying with either Harold or Chester in their personalities. The last thing I want to leave you is to discuss Howe's use of literary devices. He really artfully puts these devices in there. Obviously, there's a huge use of personification with the animals acting more like humans, like how Chester reads and Harold writes a book. But there's also uses of onomatopoeia, simile, metaphor. In one of the books, one of these devices is even explained in an exchange between Chester and their new friend Howie. But it's done in a way that's not like very obvious. It's very well integrated into the book. This book really engages its readers in the what ifs, and leaves them with a little bit of anticipation and open-endedness. I believe that this book is good for, I guess, high-level second graders, up through any age, but I guess through 5th grade would be the really prime time to read it. I would classify it as like just above the Jenny B. Jones series. It is a chapter book, and it is slightly longer and a little more complex with its thoughts and critical thinking. But other than that, it is a wonderful read and would engage any reader, boys and girls. And I just encourage any of you that will have a young reader in your life to check it out. I hope everyone has a great Thanksgiving. Enjoy your break, and good luck to everyone on their finals. Bye.